Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Big Flippin' Bass. Again, my name is Nolan Morris, as always. Today I'm going to go over something special with y'all. This is a all-around favorite bait for me for all year fishing. Most of the time, as y'all like to know, I like to throw jigs, soft plastics, flip pitch, that kind of thing. But this is something that kind of, in a way, replaced my spinner bait. And that's basically just a simple bladed jig. I'm going to pull one out here for you. They're extremely versatile. You got a chartreuse one on here. And basically all it is like a regular jig. It has a jig head on there, a big steady flipping hook, or a strong shank hook, and this little piece of metal on the front. You can get them in gold, you can get them in black, green pumpkin, they always vary. This one's a gold one, and this is a chartreuse. It's got some green in there, and I got a just pure chartreuse black flake, gold flake grub on the backside. Now I love these baits for one reason. I could fish them real shallow, and they'll actually, the chatterbait itself, which Z-Man makes the original chatterbait, these are actually really good about coming through grass. They don't get hung up very well in the grass. Even though I got that exposed hook, this blade in the head will actually ricochet it off the grass. It keeps you from getting hung up. So you can fish it in real thick grass and not get hung up. And also, this blade on the front creates a lot of vibration in the water, a lot of noise in the water. It does exactly what it's called. It chatters. And it also creates a lot of water distribution, and it gives it that fish a better chance of locking onto it with its lateral line and honing in on that bait. Now there's also another type, and that is from Strike King, and it's a rage blade. Now the difference between a regular chatterbait and a rage blade is just simply the blades on the front of it. If you notice, the rage blade has this little weight here and more of a rounded blade, where this one has that squared off edges on it and is a little smaller, and it don't have the weight on the front. The rage blade is something that I use around heavy structure. The weight on the front of this, if you're throwing up around sticks and laydowns and stuff, the weight will actually hit it and deflect that bait away from the sticks. So the rage blades are awesome about coming through your heavy cover, or your chatterbaits will actually get hung up more on laydowns, structures, sticks, and stuff like that. So when I'm fishing grassy areas, I'm going to throw a regular chatterbait, but if I'm fishing laydowns and structure, I'm going to throw the rage blade. Now, one thing I will say about the rage blades that I have found to be a little trouble is they got this little swivel on there, a little snap, whatever you want to call it, where your line tie, and it's basically like two little wires that come up and make little eyes. And to me, in personal opinion for me, or personal experience, they actually will separate a lot of times, especially if I get hung up, or if I'm fishing a lot of heavy structure, or if I'm having to jerk it out a lot. They'll tend to separate, and they'll actually fray my line a lot. So, and it'll cause me to snap them off and stuff like that. So, in personal opinion, when you talk about throwing a chatterbait or a bladed jig, I prefer the snaps. They don't separate. They stay together better. They last longer. And that's just a personal experience from me. But again, you know, like I said, I'm throwing the rage blade around more heavy cover, a lot of thick logs, laydowns, stuff like that, sticks in the water. That is something that it excels at compared to the chatterbait. If you're throwing it around grass, because it does have that weight, it's going to dig in and pick up a lot more grass. So be sure you choose which area you're throwing in. Now, for my trailers, I usually like to use these paddle tail swim baits. If you get a little smaller one, that's better. Keep it compact. But this one is actually a really good black and blue one with a reaction stripe. Cannot remember the name of this one, but it's a little reaction stripe dipper. That's what it is, a reaction stripe dipper, and it's in black and blue as well. Nice little paddle swim bait on the back of it there. And that just mimics that bait fish coming through the water. This is really good for dingy water, again, dark colors. And that just mimics that little bait fish coming through that area. And one thing that I do like about the chatterbaits is since they are weighted like a jig, you can actually fish them deeper than you would something like a spinnerbait and stuff. You can fish spinnerbaits deeper if you get heavier spinnerbaits, or if you let them sink, you can fish them that way. But this gives me a lot more versatility. The way I like to fish my chatterbaits is I'll cast them real shallow, let them sink down to the bottom, and I'll simply jig my rod up or pop my rod up one good solid time, and that's going to cause it to flip up or jerk up off the bottom and flutter back down. And then once it starts fluttering back down, I'll start a slow roll retrieve on it. and that's just going to start it swimming just like a normal bait fish. That blade on the front of it's going to shatter real hard, and that's where I get most of my strikes. I was out on Lake Conroe throwing the same exact jig, and I caught one about 3.5 pounds on it. Very, very, very versatile bait. It works all times of year. You can burn them back to the boat if their fish are really active feeding, and they'll chase it. If they're not in a chasing mood and they're real slow and lethargic during a colder time of year, you can slow roll them. You can flip them into cover and jig them like you would a normal jig, and that chatterbait on the front, that chatterblade is still going to get the water displacement and allow them to key in on it with their lateral lines. So overall, it's a very versatile bait throughout any time of year. You can slow roll them in the winter, burn them during the fall, spring, pre-spawn, post-spawn, and fall time when they're feeding up before the cold weather. Very, very, very versatile bait. Now, I tend to only have 3 colors that I really like to throw with these baits, though. And that's going to be some sort of white and sexy shad color, a white or shad color. And this one is a sexy shad color here. Again, I got another little 4-inch reactor strike dipper on the back of it. I love this paddle tail swim baits for my trailers on it. I'll probably throw a chartreuse. Again, it's going to be good in muddy waters. And black and blue. And then last but not least is a green pumpkin. That for me is the key colors with these chatterbaits. You're going to mimic the bluegill. You're going to mimic the shad. Any type of little, with the chartreuse and blue, any type of little darker, depending on the water clarity, any type of little bait fish, that's what they seem to key in on for me. So I don't like to go too crazy with that. That's the main colors that I really tend to throw when it comes to my chatterbaits. This isn't really a chatterbait, but it's kind of like a bladed jig, and it's basically an underspin. It has a little small willow leaf blade on the bottom here. It has a weighted hook onto it, a very heavy weighted hook. I think this one's a 1/4 ounce. And then it's got a short shank but heavy duty wire offset hook there. And this is good to throw your paddle tails on. And again, I'll use this almost like I would a chatterbait. I'll throw it, let it sink down, let it sit on the bottom, rip it up one good time, and then start a steady retrieve and let that thing kick behind it. It's good for getting a little flash and stuff like that if on sunnier days. Now, where I would vary throwing a chatterbait compared to a spinnerbait, if the weather's kind of choppy, if the water's kind of choppy, wind's running high, and it's not so bright outside, if it's a little overcast, that's when I'm going to throw my chatterbait. If it's a calm, slick day, no wind, sun's out, beaming down, there's no clouds in the sky, I'm probably going to throw a spinnerbait over a chatterbait. Again, that's just in personal opinion from me and personal experience. You know, if you're trying to mimic that bait fish and the water's clear and they can see the fish or see your lure, most bait fish don't have that big metal shield or big metal blade on the front of their face. So I think if you're trying to match the hatch a little bit better on clearer days or trying to really mimic that bait fish, a spinnerbait's going to be better on clearer days, in my opinion, than a chatterbait would. But on days where it's a little overcast or the water's a little choppy, it's a little windy, then I'm going to throw my chatterbait instead. They can't see it as well, or if the water's real dirty, then they can't see it as well. I'll throw the chatterbait, and I think it works for me a lot better than what I have luck for spinnerbaits on. This has almost replaced my spinnerbait. Matter of fact, because I like to fish with jigs anyway, so that bladed jig gives me the best of both worlds between a spinnerbait and a jig. That's pretty much it for tonight. I just wanted to go over a key bait for me this year round. You're going to catch fish on this year round. It's a little bigger profile. Most of the time you'll catch bigger fish on this as well. You'll catch some smaller ones. I featured one in my NTB Slam. That's the Buddha. A 3/8 ounce Buddha chatterbait. And that again is a good color for me. It's a chartreuse and white. Really mimics those shad. And then the trailers, like I said, you don't really have to match up the trailers, but it never hurts to. This chatterbait in particular, I have noticed though, it seems like it rides up a lot out of the water. And if you have trouble with that, you could take a pair of pliers and alter this blade a little bit. If you'll bend it down just a little bit, or just take your pliers and bend it at an angle, that'll keep it from riding up. It'll almost like a lip on a crankbait or something like that, allow it to sink a little bit better. But there is certain circumstances, I wouldn't do that to all of them, because chatterbaits do have a tendency to rise up out of the water. But there is certain circumstances, like if I'm fishing a higher grade or a higher level of grass underneath the water, I do want it to ride up a little bit. So don't do it to all of them, because you're always going to come across a situation where I might fish a little differently. Generally, I'm throwing these on 7-foot medium heavy rods and anywhere from 10 to 15 pound fluorocarbon. If I'm flipping and pitching, sometimes I'll even use a 17 pound fluorocarbon, but I don't go any heavier than that. I'll even throw it on braided line as well sometimes. Like I said, if I'm flipping and pitching, which I will flip these sometimes, then I'll use a 65 pound braid on that as well, depending on what heavy cover I'm flipping into. But generally, for probably 70% of the time, I'm throwing it on. This is a 15 pound fluorocarbon, 7-foot medium heavy. I don't worry about the gear ratio retrieval so much. Use this one generally a 6-4 to 1. Again, because a lot of times I'm slow rolling it anyway. I just give that nice little jig off the bottom after I cast out and let it sink down. I pop it off the bottom, let it flutter up, let it sink back down again, and just start a steady roll, slow roll to retrieve it. But if I do want to come across a situation where they seem to be chasing a lot more and hitting more faster moving baits, and I want to retrieve it a little faster, then I will throw it on something like a 7-1 to 1, 7-5 to 1 gear ratio, something like that, just so I can burn it back to the boat a little faster and keep getting multiple casts. And if I'm trying to band cast an area to see if I can locate the bass, then I'll throw it on a faster gear ratio. That just allows me to get more cast out in one area and allow me to really figure out where the bass is at, where there's locating them is what the main point of that is. So, but generally, a 6-4 to 1 gear ratio is pretty good for me. That's going to cover it for tonight. Again, if you don't have any chatterbaits, they're amazing baits. Be sure to go pick up a Z-Man chatterbait is the original. There's different brands on them though. Obviously, we got a Buddha chatterbait like I just showed you, but the Z-Man is the original brand. You can pick those up anywhere bass tackle sold, Academy, Walmart, anywhere like that. I think Academy sells them for roughly about $6 to $7, depending on which one you get. If you get the newer age chatterbait from Z-Man, I think they run about $8.50. So they get a little expensive, but they just completely catch fish. Any time of year, they'll catch fish for you. If you like the chatterbait video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Leave a thumbs up and comment below in the links. And if you're not subscribed to my social media, be sure to look me up and subscribe there. Until next time, tight lines to you in the future, and I'll see you later.